Hello, be welcome. This is Vitor Por Deus from Brazil. I'm recording this presentation that was presented online live today at the sixth Global Mental Health Conference organized by CARIMENSA and this Jamaican Psychiatric Association. And it happened today online on Google Meet. So I'm recording the slides and the narration in order we can retransmit to people this debate. So we are talking about a healing, a psychic healing, a psychiatry, the psychic healing from Brazil, a mixed people that is connected to nature. And this is the theme of the conference, which is Unpacking Colonial Trauma, Negating the Negation of Black Power. This is a major reference and a continuation of the work of the Black psychiatrist Fred Hickling from Jamaica, who was responsible for the development of a public policy for mental health since communities, asylums, and all levels of attention. And I had the opportunity to work with him in Canada and visit him in Jamaica in 2020, a few months before he passed away. And Fred is a major importance for Brazil today, for the Brazilian medicine, for Brazilian psychiatry, for Brazilian mental health, because he developed this approach on Jamaica, which resembles very much Brazilian population. It's the same profile, and we had just been together last year when we, in February, were doing the fifth conference, and also Pat Newton in this picture. Fred and Pat Newton have passed away, both of them in the same year. So it's a very complicated moment for the group, for this whole school of thought that we represent and practice. So our debate goes on Brazilian psychiatry that surprisingly was founded by a black guy, a poor boy that was born, Juliano Moreira, who is depicted here. And we will debate two extraordinary, remarkable cases of Brazilians who became psychiatrists and developed successful clinical and political and public experiences that have been utterly neglected in Brazil, in Brazilian psychiatry, Brazilian medicine, and Brazilian history. The Brazilians in general don't know that Juliano Moreira was a genius and a brilliant revolutionary psychiatrist that started Brazil. And now my own work, which is the DyoNises theater. And to start with, we have to unpack colonial science, isn't it? Colonial thought, colonialism is fundamented, is influenced by, is based on science, on knowledge, on scientific models, on theoretical models. And the main theoretical model that stemmed from Europe and started scientific revolution that is still going on was René Descartes, which proposed that the body is a machine, that nature is a machine, that we should approach through mathematics and through mechanics and through physics, and also that this machine was devoid of subjectivity, of emotions, and that through the mathematical calculations, you would be able to approach and model it and make it the Cartesian science that indeed have revolutionized the whole West and the whole world, and all we live in is a Cartesian science. We live in a Cartesian world ruled by mathematics, ruled by deterministic models of cause and effect, and all kinds of works that propose that we can isolate causes and effects and find causal relationships, and this is in the very core of medical thought. Besides that, in this line of evolution, Another major influence happened in the end of 19th century when the English Charles Darwin published in 1859 The Origin of the Species by Means of Natural Selection, proposing this idea of evolution, evolution that never stops. And very importantly, he proposed the mechanism of natural selection, which means the mechanism of competition of the fittest, survival of the fittest, selection of the fittest. So if you have the fittest feature, you are selected and you evolve, and this would be the way to develop the evolution. After that, another major breakthrough was the discovery of the germ theory by French Louis Pasteur and other important researchers like Robert Koch and others. But this idea that the bugs cause the diseases and are threats to human life, that are threats. The main threats to human life are bacteria and viruses, and now we have this coronavirus that is maddening the whole world. And this is a Cartesian model where you have specific causes that cause disease, and these diseases are factors of elimination of the unfitted, of the not fitted people. This has grown even more with the molecular biology developments in the 20th century, with the molecular structure of the DNA and the genome project and the double helix and all that. So this made a paradigm where you have Cartesian, Pasteurian, Darwinian ideas that make up this aggressive, dangerous, competitive world where you are determined by your inheritance, by your genes, and your genes determine who you are. And if you have the good genes, you are selected and you evolve. And if you have the bad genes, if you are an inferior race, if you are a degenerate race, you are eliminated. And then this is the world we face, and this is the world we are living in. And this is the colonial thinking. This is the way they think of survival of the fittest, eliminating the inferior. However, we know that there are recent and revolutionary concepts that have been accumulated in experimental biology, which is the epigenetic field, where they understand that biological systems not determined by genes, but determined by the historical course, by the historical experience and the interactions and the molecular interactions, the continuous molecular interactions that characterize biological systems, and the permanent development and the reshaping of DNA activation of different genes that are activated and reactivated according to the environment, according to diet, according to physical exercising, according to emotional experience, to cultural experiences. So we call it the field of epigenetics, which is the field of developmental biology, where we understand that the biological system is a permanently developing system, and not only the embryo is developing, but the whole organism is developing all the time. This also is considered in a new perspective with the idea of ecological relationships, continuous changing ecological relationships. And this, at last, gives a different picture of evolution, which is a non-competitive evolution, but a cooperative evolution. Biology is a cooperative enterprise. Everybody who is alive is cooperating into metabolic networks, exchange of elements, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen. Every molecule in our body changes in 2 years. And we are an interconnected biosphere, and we depend on each other. And in mental health, that is very easy to see when we see collective phenomena and collective diseases and collective behaviors that are so easily to detect in the psychiatry office. A great name for this idea is Umberto Maturana, a Chilean, a decolonial scientist, a Chilean, a scientist from the South, a scientist from the global South, that have developed, reintroduced the idea of autopoiesis, that describes the molecular autopoiesis. It means molecular relationships that develop the same molecular relationships that produce its own molecular relationships. And this, it's a very old idea. Spinoza called it the conatus, the impulse for self-preservation, and many traditions consider the circular nature of life, the circular nature of the living systems. And in Brazil, we have a huge matrix of science, of knowledge from the indigenous populations and the indigenous cultures and the indigenous healing traditions and the thousands of different tribes and different languages and different traditions that have been accumulated with their own medicine, their own philosophy, their own cosmology, their own vision of the world. And this influences us all the time in our culture, in our way of being, in our way of behaving, in our way of practicing medicine. Here in Brazil, we also have this major influence of the Black and African culture, the Yorubans, the Bantus, the importance of this in popular culture and the identity of Brazilians, and how we managed to restore African traditions that had never met before, but in Brazil they met and they restored and they mingled and they developed this powerful community engaging and community communication and public space rituals that can be seen in this picture from Brazil. And our major character today is Juliano Moreira. He was born in 1873, 15 years before the abolition of slavery in Brazil. Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery. And he was a black, poor boy from Salvador, Bahia. And when his mother died, he was recognized to be an intelligent boy, a brilliant boy. He was offered to study medicine because he had a father-in-law who was a white person and a professor in the medical school of Bahia. And he engaged with 14-year-old in medical education and turned out to be the most brilliant student of his class, the most brilliant student of Brazil. He graduated and developed pioneering studies in the field of syphilis, of dermatology, of psychiatry and dermatology. And very importantly, he outspoken clearly because of his own life against scientific racism, against eugenics, against social Darwinism, against all those Nazi eugenic ideologies that have been produced in the end of 19th and beginning of 20th century. And Juliano Moreira is a pioneer. He's a Brazilian Frantz Fanon from the end of 19th century, and he did a huge scientific work. He trained a lot of new psychiatrists. He formed many generations of Brazilian psychiatrists into cultural psychiatry, into psychoanalysis, into social transcultural psychiatry, because that's what he preached and developed when he directed for 27 years the National Asylum in Rio de Janeiro, and he worked here in Rio. So, and today nobody knows him. Nobody even knows that he was a black person, and his name is used to put in the door of asylums here. There is a huge asylum with his name, and he was homaged by Google this year. And Juliano Moreira is our hero, and I think he's a symbol for decolonization and for unpacking colonial trauma, because he himself had to go through in his life and personal life and his work, and he did it brilliantly. He was glorious. He spoke 5 languages. He lectured in Japan. He was honored in Japan by the emperor. He visited the major hospitals in Europe. He introduced the idea of scientific method in Brazil. He was a divulgator of the sciences in Brazil. He was a pioneer in psychiatry, neurology, dermatology. So we praise our ancestors and we praise Juliano Moreira, and we expect that he may help us in this challenge of promoting mental health in Brazil scientifically. Nise da Silveira came a bit later, but in the same asylum, in the same lineage of thought, in the same lineage of social and transcultural psychiatry, and she built the largest museum for art and science in the world, which is the Museum of Images of the Unconscious. She worked personally with Carl Jung, man, who was the most gifted student from Freud, and is a continuator of the work of Freud. Dr. Nise is a continuator of the work of Freud and Jung. We don't see major contradictions between their thoughts. And she built this incredible work, and she founded the House of Palms, which is a community cultural psychiatry clinic. And she did also, like Fred Hickling and like Juliano and like many other people that we know, she developed a public policy for mental health promotion, a scientific method for mental health promotion, for diagnosing, for treating, and following up severe mental illness, chronic psychotic people, schizophrenics, working through Jungian psychology and expressive means, which is from where our work derives. This is also in line with the thinking of the decolonial and revolutionary Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, who talks about the importance of cultural actions for freedom, the importance of the dialoguing, the importance of the memories, of the autonomy, of the psychological autonomy, and of the work in circles, the working in circles of culture. So Paulo Freire is also with us in our People's University for Art and Science. This is a drawing from one of our art scientists that symbolizes precisely that, from the mechanical submissive work into reading the word and reading the book, looking into the microscope and having artistic training with music and clowns and theater, and then you have fly. You can fly to the autonomy. And popular culture is the basis of this work. Community culture is the basis of this work. Public spaces is the base. If we can decolonize somewhere, we can decolonize the common space, the community space, the public space. And that's precisely what Afro-Brazilian traditions have been doing, like the capoeira, which is internationally recognized as a sport, as an art, as a dance, as a martial art, and symbolizes precisely that, the huge potential of transformation and metamorphosis that Brazilians, and because of the high level of mestiçage that we have developed, and the high level of adaptation and cultural resistance against this evil and fatalis machine, the máquina fatalis from colonization. The importance of the African traditions and the drumming and the dancing and the religiosity and the spirituality and the expressions we had been able to explore through street theater, through community festivals, through public health interventions, public health promotions in communities with cultural agents of health. I was a public manager for 7 years, and during the 7 years, we developed a whole strategy of plays and theaters and community mobilization and artist mobilization, and working with the schools of samba, and working with the community organizations, working with the LGBTQ community, working with the old women from the community, the matriarchs from the community, and telling the story of the community from the memories of those women, doing anamnesis and playing that anamnesis in the theater with democratic, open, public participation, with the involvement of the groups, of the cultural groups, of the healthy movements and the cultural movements that are very rich here in Rio de Janeiro, which is an extremely cultural city with people from all kinds of places and all kinds of people together and doing works like Sonia Regina, who is a leader from the Urubu hill, né, from the pro Morro do Urubu, who is an actress and an artist and a leader, like Dr. Vera Dantas, who is an indigenous healer and physician and professor of public health in the north of Brazil, like Francisco Gregório Filho and Rai Lima. Francisco Gregório is a storyteller from Acre, from the north of Brazil, and Rai Lima is a poet. And the communities that had been engaged, and the groups and the dancers and the samba schools and the singers, from Senhor Jair from Cruzada São Sebastião, like Dona Arlete dos Santos, who has already passed away and was a singer, an incredible singer that we have performed many plays and stories, like Vera Lúcia, who is also a matriarch from one of the communities, with the Cruzada São Sebastião that we had worked, or Irene Nunes, who was also a leader, a feminine leadership in this community, playing with us and telling the story of her own community through theater, with remarkable mental health and health promotion effects. The samba schools, the organizations of the sambas, and the importance of the past and the importance of the matriarchs, of the memories, of the rituals. Because of that, we got into very much into the work of Nise da Silveira, and we ended up working in the asylum 7 years, and there we ended up occupying one of the abandoned buildings of that asylum that was then put into, we washed the place, and we started making artistic interventions, and we transformed what was a place for exclusion and violation of health and violation of rights. We transformed it into a cultural center which was called the Madness Hotel, that indeed did incredible transformations, like with Jaci Oliveira, who was one of our actors who was homeless, and after 5 years of psychotherapeutic and drama therapeutic and community engaging work, he got to get out of that dependency condition, and he lives alone. He rented his own small studio in the suburb of Rio, and he keeps working. Reginaldo Terra was arrested for 58 years inside psychiatric institutions and got out of it, got out of chronic psychosis through theater, working and playing, and he traveled and he played the ghost of King Hamlet, and we do have it documented when he plays the ghost of Hamlet in the public space, and he would make a huge success. He won prizes after he prizes of movies and with this interpretation, and this was incredible. And also another very emblematic case from the asylum of Engenho de Dentro was Miriam Rodrigues Galvão, who became an actress, and she got back to study at the maximum of the experience she was learning and passing of year. And these are scientific proofs that this idea of cultural psychiatry, transcultural psychiatry, Freudian therapy, Jungian therapy, psychoanalysis are real challenges and real results and scientific approach that we can have. So in our work, we deliver the microphone to the subject, to the person, to the participant, to the client. Any person has the right to speak and has the right to express herself. We went into the residency program for artists inside the Madness Hotel, inside the asylum. Many groups from Rio and many people from different communities. We had people from more than 20 communities working together in that old abandoned asylum, and that was very prolific and influenced a lot of new generations of artists, of psychologists, of physicians that experienced the Madness Hotel that was closed by the government in 2016 in the context of the coup d'etat. We played Hamlet and then we started using this phrase, madness, yet there is method in it. and this was a whole experience that showed a lot of the practices of the Madness Hotel and documented it, and the way we play it and the way we would work with Shakespeare and with the poetry and the movies and the occupation of the public space and the use of poetry. All that is documented in our movie. You can watch it in YouTube. In 2016, 2015, we had the visit of BBC that came to document the Madness Hotel and the theater and all that we were able to produce. Like Fred Hickling in the Bellevue Hospital, we changed this
we can see the evolution
environment
of the person.
Of oppression and exclusion and colonization through an environment of culture, of identity growing, of decolonization, of discovering Brazilian identity, of bringing the work of people, of playing in public spaces.
On mental health
all
problems.
That is documented
and the people here perform
and immortalized in BBC. And we think we have achieved important result. That
level, these performances allow patients stimulation and interaction they would otherwise not get. But Vito is adamant his work heals and changes lives on a level that science
and productive experience, and this shows the potency of mental health promotion, the potency of autonomy promotion strategies, and that's what the world is needing right now. This is another movie. This is a prized movie. We won many prizes of documentary and movie festivals, showing precisely the Madness Hotel, how we worked and how we played Hamlet during 2 years, 2014 and 2015, in the Asylum of Engenho de Dentro, which is precisely where Juliano Moreira and Nise da Silveira have worked their whole lives. Now we keep working as DyoNises Theater Clinic in Rio de Janeiro, 2 years and a half of experience, which is the time I returned from Canada. And we are now seeing people from more than 24 communities from different places in the office. And the scenario is extremely complicated. We have feminicide and many severe mental illness patients, and many cases of child abuse, rituals, and it's macabre and sinister and bizarre rituals being performed with children and women and communities. The organized crime in Rio de Janeiro, the organized crime in government. It's really a colonial situation. We are still colonized, and we are being neo-colonized, cyber-colonized. And in this environment, we have been working a lot, and we do a lot of events and performances and lectures and interviews and movies. We evaluate the performance of our patients through the theater, through the presence, the engagement, the singing, the dancing. And we have been having a rate of improvement of documented performance change, autonomy gaining, improvement of almost 20%. Out of each 5, we have a positive evolution in 20%. Out of each 5, 1% improves. And in this scenario where everybody is in crisis, where the whole society is collapsing, where everybody is going crazy right now in Brazil and in the whole world, but in Brazil everything is amplified, it's a great success rate. And we have been because we are Jungian, we have from this Nise da Silveira orientation, we have been identifying archetypal themes that are very rooty and appear in almost every case or in certain key cases that reflect the rest of the community. So the fetish for money, the mammon, the devil, the demon mammon from the Old Testament, or the invention of money scene that Faust by Goethe plays it. We have been seeing a few cases of a very worrisome situation of ritualized child abuse, of Satanism. And there is a significant work of anthropology of Neo-Pentecostalism and Umbanda and Candomblé in Brazil. So this is a very, very shadowy field, and with many disputes and many violent disputes. involving religions and the control of communities and control of families and of women, of children. We have a lot of organized crime and paramilitary militias attacking families and communities and disappears in psychiatry office. The family looks for assistance because they are afraid of being killed. They are afraid of having their house robbed by organized crime and militias that are in the territory since the foundation of Brazil. This is why it's important to debate decolonization. And we have these always problematic egos, isn't it? Egocentrism, vampirism, hysteria, ego formation, where still Freud is the king. Jung helps a lot with cultural perspective and cultural anamnesis, anthropological anamnesis. And I also cite from the Jungian school, John Wyer Perry, who is an American psychiatrist, but has a very significant work on acute psychosis and the formation of ego. He published 6 books, and it's a very clinical, useful work for crisis and also the famous sex wars, the Marduk-Tiamat syndrome, the war between the Babylonian gods, Marduk, the god of thunder, the male, the aggressor male, that kills his goddess, sister, mother, grandmother, Tiamat, represented as a dragon. And we are still seeing this. Aggressive males attacking females and generating very hard patterns of work. We keep playing. We have been playing in Pelezinho, in scene. Now we keep doing. We were doing now with the pandemics. The theater have been paralyzed, and we are doing closed rehearsals and public space rehearsals. But we had been playing a lot before the pandemics paralyzed us, and we had been working with large numbers of people and large numbers of patients and people, improving their condition as people, as not as patients, but as actors. Every human being is an actor, and the whole world is a stage, as William Shakespeare said in As You Like It. And then we fall into the pandemics. We have been working as much as we can in the internet, in the YouTube, doing communications, interviews, group sessions, and this is a major challenge to continue the work in this context. We had been recently resumed public performance with our stable, closed group of actors, and we are doing this in public spaces with social distancing. And we also going to start next week a psychopathology online journal club in Portuguese, which we are calling the attention to the epigenetic psychopathology in the Transcultural Clinic. Thank you very much. I hope our Brazilian psychiatry may be useful in Brazil and to other people that have been colonized and suffering those transgenerational traumas, epigenetic transgenerational traumas that are so severe and give us so much hard work. And we thank Fred Hickling, we thank Patricia Newton, we thank Juliano Moreira, we thank Alta Stewart, we thank Geoffrey Walcott, we thank Debian Chambers, we thank Jasmine Guzder, Frantz Fanon, and all the people and all the researchers and all the professionals that are resisting this colonial oppression through psychiatry, science, and clinical work, which is now our oxygen. It's my oxygen to survive, to see my patients improve, my Brazilian patients improve and find out that they are Afro-Brazilians, that they have Black identities, that they have Sephardic identities, that they have Mediterraneans from the South identities. And this is our major challenge, to recognize ourselves, not allow colonization preventing us from encountering ourselves. Thank you very much.